Alright, ladies and gentlemen. A couple months ago, I stumbled across a list of 250, or was it 240? Doesn't matter. Philosophical questions. And now I've got a dumb one. If people live in a time zone ahead of you, does it mean they live in the future? Yeah. Before I go any further, let me remind you that for every 1,000 subscribers I get, I do purchase one of these bracelets from 4Ocean. 4Ocean pulls upon attraction of the ocean every time I do that. If you'd be so kind as comment, like, and subscribe, you're doing your part for a better world. Now, there's an airplane. Anyway. Time zones. Man began to tell time by the sun. This was very useful because you can't really do much without the sun if you don't have fire. You know, there were places where it's like, okay, I can't see nothing, so it's all about the sun. At this point, it is very likely that man was living around the equator, all right? Places where there's a lot of sun. Consistently every day. I'm told up in the Arctic Circle, 6 months of the year it's light, and 6 months of the year it's dark. And you know, the further you get from the equator, the more of a variance you have on, you know, the amount of time there is in a day. So, at some point, we came up with the idea of the sundial, which was a device that you set at a certain angle, and then the sun hits it, and the shadow of the sun shows you what time it is. This is where we get the concept of time, you know, of a clock, the face of a clock. An analog clock is based on a sundial. All right. So then at some point, human beings developed what we refer to as mass transportation. We had things like trains and ships. All right. So trains and ships. I do believe clocks were a thing at this time, but time zones were not. And I mean, what you would probably do to get your clock to work would be you'd pull out your sundial and you'd, you know, set your sundial to however sundials work. You'd check the time on the sundial. You'd set your clock to that, and then, you know, otherwise it wouldn't be all that important, all right? You know, if you said, hey, I'm going to meet you at noon tomorrow, before we had cars, we had trains. So unless you're taking the train, you're not going very far. I mean, you know, going by horse, it's like, yeah, noon tomorrow to you may be a difference of 10 minutes because you set your sundial differently or you got the angle wrong. But that's... I have cats. That's not all that important, all right? But once we got trains, suddenly you had these things that move at a determined speed, and people needed to know when to show up to get on the train. So the sundial didn't work anymore. You know, you could move so that, you know, the amount of sun you got in the day was shorter, so you had to go by the clock, but everybody was setting the clock by the sundial. So suddenly we all got together and said, let's figure out what time it is in various places, right? That's where we get the concept of time zones. We said, okay, from here to here, it's this time, and from here to here, it's this time. And I believe they shift by an hour. But I mean, you know, it's like, I don't even know if this is true, but there basically should be 24 time zones. You know, one for every hour of the day. And, you know, somewhere it is 12 hours ago. That would be halfway around the world, right? And then somewhere it is 24 hours ago. That would be almost completely around the world. So then someone says, if people live in a different time zone, does that mean they live in the future? No. No, it doesn't work that way. If somebody from a different time zone says, I'm going to call you at 10 o'clock California time, they call at 10 o'clock California time, even if it's 8 o'clock their time. If I call my cousin in Ohio, it's not whatever time it is I'm calling from over here, over there. It's whatever time it is over there, and whatever time it is over here. So, you know, if I say something happened at so-and-so a time in California, then, you know, someone in Hawaii doesn't assume that it still happened at that time. So time zones are irrelevant to the concept of time itself. Time zones are a human construct. And, I mean, you know, one thing you have to understand about calendars is, like, we talk about BC time. And, I mean, you know, BC time, basically speaking, I mean, it's not true, but they slate that the year our modern times, our calendar started was the year that Jesus was born, okay? And the historians have said that's not true, but it's close, you know. And everything after that is based on our time. And it's like there's the year 1, you know, and the year 1 BC is basically -1, you know. But those people didn't think, well, you know, there's going to be a year in the future we're going to call the year 1, and every year after, it's like, no, every culture pretty much had their own concept of time. You know, it's like the year 2000 came up, and everyone was saying, oh no, the world's going to end. But it's like, you know, by certain calendars, it's not the year 2000. It was like the year 8000 and something. And that's kind of how time works, is we have our measures of time. Our measures of time are very much related to the society we live in and the important points of that society, but they are not cosmically important. I mean, somebody once said, if you compressed all of history, the history of the universe, into a single year, I think like the Earth only appears on the last day, and humanity only the last second. And that's that thing about the true vastness of time is difficult for our minds to comprehend. That's the nature of time. It is infinite and incredible. And I mean, you look at things like this glass. This glass is made of silicon. It's very likely that this silicate was once a rock, even possibly a quartz crystal, and that rock was weathered by rain, perhaps water, or a running river, or water, or even the sea, and over lifetimes it was worn down into sand, and then somewhere somebody scooped up that sand and sieved out the lead and impurities to make clear glass. And when you think about this glass, at one point was magma, okay? Magma is molten rock beneath the earth. If magma comes above the earth, it becomes lava. So magma is under the ground, lava is above it. So this material was once molten rock under the earth millions of years ago. And its journey from there, took millions of years to become this glass that is sitting on this piece of tile, that is sitting on this box, that is sitting on the stand I have it on, and so forth. Time doesn't care about us. We are insignificant to it. It ticks on no matter what. So that's just one of those things. It's like, yeah, nobody's living in the future. Everybody lives in the present. We're prisoners of the present, as Neil deGrasse Tyson would say. We can't go forward in time. Well, we are going forward in time, but that forward in time is always our present, and we could never go back. At least so far as we know at the moment, although it's theoretically possible. And that's just one of those things. Time zones are just a silly human construct. And on the one hand, you could say that construct does place things in some kind of quasi-future and some kind of quasi-past. But in the grander scheme of things, it's irrelevant. I forget, at some point in time, they talked about, if Santa Claus were real, he wouldn't have 24 hours to deliver all of the toys on Christmas. Because of time zones, he would have, 2 days, I think, or something like that. Some increase of hours. But, what's the real difference? A date is a blip in time, and you can be very, very finite with the date, giving it a location and a time down to the microsecond, or you could be very, very broad with a date. Sometimes we say this happened in the 16th century, this happened in the 19th century, this happened in the 3rd century. But as far as time goes, we're all living in this dot that is the present. And whereas that was a silly question, I guess it was worth exploring if you were entertained by everything I had to say. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. I'm Richard. Oogog, Ergonog,
Daniel Ducky say YouTube gods need long outro so I can tell you comment, like, and subscribe so that this channel can pull trash out of ocean by buying matrices from 4Ocean. Also, links to new video now appear. Comment, like, and subscribe, or be cursed by Ugatha. Danger Ducky approves.